Hi, everybody. Welcome to our second session of Your Best Interview. I am Stephanie Smith, and I'm here with my good friend Libby. And we are here to talk about what it is that you do in the interview this week. So thanks for joining us. But first, a quick little background on each of us. I am the founder and CEO of Refined and Ready Career Consulting, where I help everyday people write great resumes. Before starting Refined and Ready, I had a varied career path. I started in massage therapy, moved on to social work, and then did 10 years in Big Four public accounting. And I will let Libby introduce herself here.
Hey everyone, I'm Libby Magliolo. I focus more on the interview side of things, whereas Stephanie is more on the resume and the prep side of things. So I've spent about 10 years after getting my MBA in the corporate world, mainly in corporate strategy roles. I talk about PowerPoint being my love language. That's kind of my focus. That's what I do a lot of, but very, very passionate about the interview process. I know it's a daunting one. And so I love doing anything I can to help demystify that and make it a little more approachable. So glad you're here. So Stephanie, I think we had a question last time come up about cover letters and the role of cover letters and how to handle that. So I know you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to speak to that today. So, in terms of cover letters, I know the jury's kind of out and everybody has an opinion, but this one is mine. So, I think that the cover letter can be a useful tool. I would only use it in a situation where someone is asking for a cover letter or where, you need to, if you've got an email address where someone's given you a connection and you're networking and you need to somehow introduce yourself and you're attaching your resume, or there's somewhere to upload the cover letter. I would not go out of my way to create and upload a cover letter if they're not requesting it. But in those situations, it can be a really helpful tool. The thing that I will say about cover letters is that I think there's a lot of opportunity within a cover letter to do yourself a disservice. And so you want to make sure that you're avoiding that. I've seen cover letters that kind of go over the top, either, rehashing a lot of your resume, pictures on a cover letter, getting way too much information on there, not speaking to the role itself, speaking a bit too much about the company or, fond memories that you have of childhood about, a certain product or something. You want to stay relevant to the position that you're applying for. So where I see the cover letter being just a really valuable asset is when someone's taking maybe an unconventional move. Say you're pivoting from one profession to another, or you're taking what would be considered a step backwards. Like if you've been in a high stress position within your field and you're looking to just sort of reset a little bit. Maybe you want to get your foot in the door at a company and there's an entry level role or a lower level role, and you need to kind of explain that because your application and your experience just doesn't entirely line up with what they're expecting to see, but you are qualified for the position. A cover letter can be a great way to bridge that gap. So, I am a big fan of the, professional, dare I say, boring cover letter, dear so-and-so, thank you so much for considering my application, blah, 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 and then the middle paragraph is where you've got the meat of things. My background is in this. I am looking forward to contributing in this way. Here's why I'm taking this step. Here's why I'm going in this direction. And really sort of fill in the gaps, paint the picture for the person that's reading it. And then, of course, close it out in a very professional way. Like, thank you again for your consideration. I look forward to hearing from you. The great thing about this is it gives you this opportunity to take, to put yourself out there in this specific way, but it's also not a lot of effort. You're not recreating the wheel every time you're applying. It's sort of like your resume. You may tweak it here and there, but this isn't, starting from scratch every time. And I think that can alleviate some of the burden. But just make sure that your cover letter is speaking to the correct position and the correct company. Do not send the wrong cover letter, because that is, once again, something that could cause a problem. So those are my thoughts on cover letters. Libby, do you have anything to add, or do you want to dive in here?
Let's go ahead and dive in.
All right.
Said this before, but I think the cover letter is starting to fade away, but you'll still see it enough that you need to know how to do it professionally. And the only things that I'll add are, don't put the wrong company name in there, and as your most detail-oriented friend, check it for misspellings, because you never want to give your interviewer an easy way to put your resume in the no pile. So but I think we're going to dig in and talk today about the actual interview. So last time we talked about how to prep for an interview. This time we're going to talk about the actual interview. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the most common questions that you will certainly get in every interview, regardless of your industry, function, role, anything. So 90% of the time, in 90% of interviews, the first question you're going to get is either tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume. This is just kind of the basic get to know you question. So here's how I handle this. I handle this in reverse chronological order. So start with the earliest, and I handle it just like my resume, that my earlier positions that were 10 plus years ago, those things get a one sentence mention versus the position I've been in most recently gets, much more airtime in the interview answer. So reverse chronologically, I don't like focusing in on anything personal life, pivot to professional. And again, exactly like your resume, handle the answer by focusing in on the aspects of your previous roles that are most relevant to the role that you're interviewing for. The main pitfall in this question is too long of an answer. I'm a fan of 30 to 60 seconds. And for any interview question, you can always say, I'll leave it right there. But if there's anything that you'd like me to dig in on and focus on, I'd be more than happy to. I've seen answers that go 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. I just encourage you to think about, if you ask your friend, hey, how's your weekend? Imagine if they sat there and talked for 5 minutes straight at you, just a monologue, like, oh, first I did this and this and this, and then it went on for 5 minutes. It's human nature. We can't pay that long. So 30 to 60 seconds, keep it short, keep it sweet, and ask if there's anything that you can dive in on. But this is one that you want to have a really good answer for, because you will get asked it in every single interview. This is kind of your elevator pitch for yourself. And it's what kicks off the interview. So you want to start it off on a good foot. What would you add to that, Stephanie? How would you answer this?
I think that's fantastic. Like you said, it really is setting the tone. And I think back to some interviews where, you ask this one, it's sort of like, hey, how's your day? And then they just drone on. And it is very, very hard to come back from that. Yeah. As the person on the other side of the table that's giving the interview, you think, you're almost afraid to ask the next question because you want to get the information, but you don't want to be held hostage. So, practice it in front of the mirror, know what you're going to say. And this one's an easy one. So know your story, know what you're going to say, and just make sure that it's sort of a comfortable length for yourself and for everyone. And I think you'll be good. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's
great. I would just say, tune into your interviewer's body language and eye line. You can tell when you start to lose somebody if there's kind of wandering eyes or pen tapping or anything. So tune in on that and maybe adjust accordingly. So the second question or type of question you'll almost certainly be asked starts something like, tell me about a time when, or can you think of the last time that you ... So this can be, tell me about a time that you failed. Tell me about a time that you had to pitch an unpopular opinion. Tell me about a time that you disagreed with your boss. So this whole category of questions are called behavioral or situational questions. Very common in most interviews. The reason that your interviewer is doing this is they're trying to get a sense of how you either have functioned in the past in a real world role, or how you will function in the future if they bring you on to that job. They want to understand your thought process. They want to understand your actions. They want to understand how you deal with things like conflict resolution. And so this is when it's really important to do some prep. This is not the time to sit and think and try and piece together stories from your past. You want to have your kind of list of stories and anecdotes relevant to your resume, relevant to the job description, ready to go, because this is kind of your time to shine and show that, hey, I handled this situation before, I can handle this situation again. And so, this is also when you're probably going to get asked about your strengths and your weaknesses and all that, and you want to have those good stories ready to tell. So I, in school, learned the STAR format. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what that is and how to structure your answers based off of your resume and the job description and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Libby. I'll just echo what Libby has to say here. Yes, an interview is a conversation, but you've got to be prepared for this conversation. It's very informational based, and it's about you. So you have to be able to speak to yourself. The STAR method is really a great way to think through your resume and lay things out. Like Libby said, you're going to get a lot of these behavioral based questions. They want to see how you functioned in conflict, in a stressful situation, in a managerial role, and in any of these types of positions or situations that are going to pop up in the job. And so you have to be able to speak to them. And what I recommend doing is, go down your resume. write out, write out STAR, and STAR stands for situation, task, action. Is that right, Libby?
Action result.
Action result. That's right. Sorry, mental block there. So you can even write these out, sort of a little acronym under each position or each bullet point, like whatever feels right to you, and say, here's this thing that happened. Like somebody's going to ask me, tell me about a time that, like Libby said, you had a problem with your boss, or you had difficulty with another coworker, or you didn't meet a timeline, you had an issue with a client, like generally like conflict oriented, something that had to be overcome, something that you had to work through. And you want to have these examples like at the ready, and it's okay to take a moment and sort of think through, okay, which one of my examples apply to this situation best? Which do I want to speak to? It's okay to have those pauses in the interview, but then you want to be ready to deliver a very good answer. So think through your experiences, go bullet point by bullet point, go job by job, and say, okay, so, when I worked in this position, we had this difficult client and this difficult thing happened, and here's how we rallied as a team, and here was my role in that, and here's how we were able to manage this client relationship, get this thing done on time, prepare the deliverable, whatever the resulting action was. So you almost want to have it tied up in this nice, neat little bow. You had the conflict, you had the thing that you did, and then you had this resolution that worked for all parties involved, or saved a bad situation from being worse, some sort of positive outcome. Yeah. And then the other thing that I'll say is you can write these out almost on a little piece of paper. When I was preparing for interviews, 10 years ago, I had a Word document and I wrote these out in paragraph form and I recited them in the mirror, not word for word. This wasn't memorizing my lines, but like you have to be comfortable enough saying, when I worked for this thing, we had this thing happen and it was really frustrating and difficult. And so, together with the team, we brainstormed, we came up with this idea, and then we did X, Y, and Z, and we're able to achieve this result. And just that's it, but you have to be able to recall them and then feel comfortable speaking to them. So preparation really is key, and it's going to make the conversation go more smoothly, because nothing's worse for the interviewer than asking you a question and then having to sort of watch you fumble through it. Like it's tough for everybody when you're struggling through an answer. So be prepared for your answers, and I think you'll be in a good place. What do you think, Libby? Does that, like, how else would you suggest to kind of keep things conversational in a positive way, an intentional way? What would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, it's tough because it's a balance, because everyone knows that it's this very formal, very kind of artificial situation, that this is not how people talk, in 1 minute answers and all that. So you want to be this mix of prepared yet very natural and conversational. And so that's hard to do. But what I suggest is exactly what you just said, is prepare your answers, kind of write out an outline. The last thing I would suggest is try to memorize word for word. The way I do this is I'll write out my answer and then kind of boil it down to like 3 words. And so in my mind, it's like, accounting software, streamlining processes, 15% cost reduction, whatever. So I know that those are kind of the 3 points. And then practice it in the mirror, practice it with a friend or anyone, have them kind of fire off questions with you. And so your preparation is your time to get, your structure down. And then the practice time, the kind of mock interview time, is your time to make it feel more natural. Put it in your own voice, and put it in your own words, and make it a little bit more conversational. So I think practice really helps with that, because, I've gone into an interview before having just done the written preparation, and you go in and it feels very stiff and it feels very forced, and you do feel like you're kind of reading lines from a play. So it sounds like a lot of work, and it is, but doing some great prep and then practicing it with people, practice with anyone who will listen, and just have them just fire off some questions for you, and maybe ones that you're not expecting. And that really helps me to be conversational.
That's great.
Yeah,
I would just jump in and say, even on the, it's feeling like a lot of work, like it's a lot of work on the front end, right? But this is going to serve you for every single interview, because they might ask a slightly different question, but you can pull from these and draw from them, and make things a little bit malleable if you need to answer the question that's being asked. So once you've done this initial upfront prep, then you're just sort of reviewing, interview after interview. It's not this huge lift every time. It's just a lot of, it can be a lot up front, but then you're good to go. Sort of like the resume.
Yeah. That's a great point. Rinse and repeat. You're not having to recreate the wheel. Well, I think that's it for us for this week. So the last week we focused on interview prep. Today we focused on the actual interview. Next time we're going to focus on kind of our favorite tips and maybe some more unconventional things that you haven't heard of regularly. So thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Bye.